What if the song you hummed this morning was written specifically for this moment in history? Not just written, prophesied. What if the music rising up in churches, in bedrooms, in cars, on long, quiet drives is actually the sound of heaven preparing for something? And what if I told you that across centuries, across continents, across languages and cultures, there has always been a song that rises just before everything changes? I know that sounds like a lot, but stay with me, because what I'm about to share with you today might be one of the most beautiful and soul-stirring things you've ever heard. And I don't say that lightly. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here. Today we're going to talk about holy songs. Not just worship music in the general sense, but the specific, aching, soaring, tear your heart open kind of music that emerges in the last days. The kind that sounds like it was written by people who could see something just beyond the horizon. People who were listening so carefully to heaven that a little bit of heaven leaked into what they wrote. And here's what I want you to walk away with today. I want you to understand why music is so central to the return of Jesus. I want you to feel, not just know, but feel, why God has been filling his people with songs right now in this season, in this generation. And I want you to leave here with something that changes the way you listen to worship music for the rest of your life. Because here's the thing, Jesus is coming for his people. I believe that with everything in me. And the church, without fully realizing it, has been singing about it, preparing for it, feeling it in her bones. Let's begin at the very beginning. Not the beginning of time, but the beginning of a sound. There is a moment in the book of Revelation that not enough people talk about. And when you hear it, really hear it, it will stop you cold. In Revelation chapter 5, the Apostle John is caught up in a vision of heaven, and he sees something. He sees a scroll sealed with 7 seals, and no one in heaven or on earth or under the earth is able to open it. And John weeps. He actually weeps. This great seer, this beloved disciple, he breaks down because it seems like no one is worthy. And then one of the elders says to him, "Do not weep. See, the Lion of the tribe of Judah has triumphed. He is able to open the scroll." And John looks, and what he sees is not a lion. He sees a lamb standing in the center of the throne. And the very moment the lamb takes the scroll, something extraordinary happens. The 4 living creatures and the 24 elders fall down before the lamb, each one of them holding a harp, and they sing a new song. A new song, not a repeated liturgy, not a memorized hymn. A new song, spontaneous, rising. Something that had never existed before that moment because the moment itself had never existed before. That image has stayed with me. This picture of heaven erupting into music at the unveiling of something profound. As if the only right response to what God is doing is song. And I want to ask you something. Have you noticed what is happening in worship music right now? In this generation, there is something different in the air. I don't know if you felt it, but there is a quality to the worship rising up from the church right now that feels different from 10 years ago, 20 years ago. There's an urgency, a tenderness, a longing that goes so deep it almost aches. Why do you think that is? I think, and I hold this with reverence and care, I think the Spirit of God is doing something in the music of his people that directly corresponds to what is coming. I think we are living in a season where heaven is drawing close. And when heaven draws close, music changes. Let me tell you something that most people don't know about the history of revival and song. Every great move of God in history has been accompanied by a sound. Every single one. Before the Reformation, there was the music of the Gregorian chants, simple, haunting, pointing toward transcendence in a world that had forgotten it was possible. Then Martin Luther himself wrote hymns. He used the popular melodies of his day and filled them with the truth of the gospel. "In a mighty fortress is our God." Do you know that song? Luther wrote that in a moment of intense spiritual warfare, and it became an anthem, a battle cry, a declaration that outlasted him by 500 years. Then came the Wesleyan revival. Charles Wesley, John's brother, wrote over 6,000 hymns. 6,000 in one lifetime. He wrote "Hark the Herald Angels Sing." He wrote "Oh, for a Thousand Tongues to Sing." He wrote "Love Divine, All Loves Excelling." And when those songs swept through England and then America, they didn't just comfort people, they changed people. Entire communities were transformed, not just by preaching, by singing. Then came the Welsh revival of 1904. Evan Roberts, a young coal miner with a burning heart, would stand in services and the congregation would just sing for hours without stopping, spontaneously. The newspapers reported on it. People who came to mock stayed to weep, and over 100,000 people gave their lives to Christ in less than a year. The pubs went quiet. The police had so little crime to deal with, they started joining the singing too. And what I'm about to share with you will completely change the way you see this. Every one of those revivals, the Reformation, the Wesleyan Awakening, the Welsh Revival, happened just before enormous shifts in human history, as if God was preparing his people with a sound before everything changed. And what does the church sound like right now? I've been listening, and what I hear in the worship music of this generation, the Hillsong anthems, the Bethel songs, the Keith and Kristen Getty hymns, the spontaneous worship of voices raised in the small hours of prayer meetings, I hear longing. I hear a church that is not fully at home in this world, a church that is reaching for something it can sense but not quite touch. That is not an accident. In Matthew chapter 24, Jesus is sitting on the Mount of Olives with his disciples, and they actually just come out and ask him, what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? And Jesus doesn't shut them down. He doesn't say that's not for you to know. He starts describing wars and rumors of wars, nation rising against nation, earthquakes, famines, persecution. And he says, but the one who endures to the end will be saved. And then, this is the part that grips me. He says, and this gospel of the kingdom will be proclaimed throughout the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. The whole world, every nation, every tongue, every people group. Do you know how close we are to that? Right now, in 2026, missionaries and technology and media are reaching into places that were unreachable a generation ago. The gospel is going to the ends of the earth, and the church is singing it there. I want to tell you about a woman named Perpetua. She lived in the 3rd century in Carthage, modern-day Tunisia. She was young, educated, newly married with a nursing infant. She was arrested for her faith during the persecution of Christians under the Roman Emperor Septimius Severus. She was thrown into prison. And in that prison, in the darkness and the fear, she had visions, and she wrote them down. One of the oldest first-person accounts by a Christian woman that we have. But here's the thing about Perpetua that breaks my heart open every time I think about it. On the day she was led into the arena, she was singing. She was singing hymns, walking into the place where she knew she would die, singing. One of her companions, a young man named Satyrus, ran ahead of the procurator and said to him, note our faces well so that you may recognize us on the day of judgment. And then they went in, singing. There's something about the people of God, throughout all of history, that makes them sing when everything else falls silent. When the world offers nothing but fear, they find a song, because the song doesn't come from the world. It comes from somewhere else. It comes from the same place it came from in that vision in Revelation, from before the throne of the Lamb. Now here is a pattern interrupt I need you to hold on to, because this changes everything. Did you know that in the original Hebrew of the Old Testament, the word for sing appears over 200 times? More than the word for pray, more than the word for preach, more than the word for fast. The people of God were, above everything else, a singing people. The Psalms, all 150 of them, were not poems meant to be read. They were songs meant to be sung. Every single one. The book of Psalms is literally the hymnal of ancient Israel. And if you trace the themes of the Psalms, really trace them, you find something remarkable. The Psalms move. They move from lament to praise, from darkness to dawn, from the pit to the throne room, again and again and again. And some of the Psalms, the ones called the Songs of Ascent, Psalms 120 through 134, were the songs pilgrims sang as they walked up toward Jerusalem, climbing, step by step, song by song, getting closer. Is that not what we are doing right now? We are pilgrims. We are climbing. We are getting closer to something. And the songs that rise in our generation are the songs of people who are nearly there. I want to talk about what happens to music when the Spirit moves. There is a phenomenon that has been documented across revivals, across cultures, across centuries. When the presence of God falls on a group of people, they spontaneously sing, not rehearsed songs, though those are precious too, but something that rises from a place deeper than preparation. Something that bypasses the mind and speaks directly from spirit to spirit. In the Azusa Street revival of 1906 in Los Angeles, there were accounts of people singing in languages they did not know, singing in perfect harmony with complete strangers. A newspaper reporter at the time wrote that the sound coming from that small building on Azusa Street was unlike anything he had ever heard. He didn't know what to call it. He just knew it was different. And right now, across prayer rooms and worship nights and small group gatherings around the world, people are reporting the same thing. There is something happening in the music, a quality that is hard to name, a weight, a glory, a sense that the veil between here and there is thinner than it used to be. And what I'm about to share with you will completely change the way you see this. In 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, Paul writes about the return of Jesus, and he uses a word that has fascinated scholars for centuries. He says the Lord will descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of an archangel, and with the trumpet of God. The trumpet of God, not a human trumpet, the trumpet of God himself. In the ancient world, trumpets were used to signal. They were used to call armies to battle. They were used to announce the arrival of a king. And in the Jewish tradition, in the Feast of Trumpets, Rosh Hashanah, the blowing of the shofar was a call to wake up, to return, to prepare. The last sound before Jesus comes will be a trumpet, a holy, cosmic, divine trumpet call. And for 2,000 years, the church has been singing about it, waiting for it, longing for it. Lift up your heads, O gates, and be lifted up, O ancient doors, that the King of glory may come in. That's Psalm 24. That's a song about a king arriving. Every worship song about the return of Christ, every chorus about seeing him face to face, every hymn about the clouds parting, every spontaneous cry in the night that says, "Come, Lord Jesus, come," is an echo of that trumpet. The church has been singing the arrival of the king long before the arrival happens. Now I need to stop here for a moment because I want to be real with you. I know that talk of the last days and the return of Christ can feel abstract. It can feel like theology rather than life. And I know that some of you have been through enough that the idea of hope feels dangerous because hope has disappointed you before. You've prayed and waited, and the answer didn't come the way you expected. And you've loved ones who've suffered, and you've watched the world and wondered if God sees any of it. I see you, and I want you to know, whatever this moment feels like for you, there is a song being written over your life too. There is a melody that has your name in it. And the God who numbers the hairs on your head has not forgotten a single note of it. Because here is what the Bible tells us about the music of eternity. In Revelation chapter 15, John sees another vision. He sees those who had conquered, those who had come through the great tribulation, and they are standing on a sea of glass, mingled with fire, and they are holding harps. And they are singing the song of Moses and the song of the Lamb. And these are the words, "Great and marvelous are your deeds, Lord God Almighty. Just and true are your ways, King of the nations. Just and true are your ways." That is not a triumphant shout from people who never suffered. That is a declaration from people who went through fire and came out the other side singing, who saw everything they feared come to pass and discovered that God was still good, still true. That song, the song of Moses and the song of the Lamb, is the song of people who crossed an impossible sea. Moses led Israel through the Red Sea, and when they reached the other side, Miriam took up a tambourine and danced, and the people sang. In Revelation, the redeemed stand on a sea of glass, what was once a sea they had to cross, and they sing the same song. Because the God who brought them through then is the same God who brought them through now. We are not just singing songs about the return of Christ. We are participating in a story that has been building for millennia. And the songs of this generation are not accidental. They are part of the score. They are part of what God is writing. Here's something I find breathtaking. In Luke chapter 19, when Jesus entered Jerusalem on what we call Palm Sunday, the crowds were shouting and singing, "Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord. Peace in heaven and glory in the highest." And the Pharisees told Jesus to rebuke them, to make them be quiet. And Jesus said, "I tell you, if they were silent, the very stones would cry out." The very stones would cry out. Creation itself was ready to worship. Creation itself knew something was happening, and the people were doing what they were made to do. They were singing it out loud first. I believe we are in a similar moment. I believe the very stones of this earth are trembling with anticipation. I believe creation is groaning. Romans 8 tells us that creation groans and waits with eager longing for the revealing of the sons of God. And in that groaning and that longing, the church is singing. We are the ones with voices. We are the ones made in the image of the one who sang the world into being. And we are using those voices for exactly what they were made for. And here's a question I want you to sit with for a moment. When you worship, when you close your eyes and lift your hands or bow your head or whisper the words of a song in your kitchen while the kids are asleep, do you know that you are joining something ancient? Something that was happening before you were born and will continue after you are gone. You are not just expressing a personal feeling. You are adding your voice to a chorus that stretches from the early church in the catacombs to the persecuted believers in underground churches today, to the great cloud of witnesses who have already crossed over and are even now before the throne. You are part of a song that has been building for 2,000 years, and it is almost done. Not finished, almost done. There is something coming that will complete it, something that every generation of the church has leaned toward. Something that the Apostle John, exiled on the island of Patmos, heard as the sound of many waters and the sound of loud thunder and the sound of harpists playing on their harps. He called it a new song before the throne. We are almost there. Now let me tell you about a song that was written in a dark place and became one of the most beloved worship songs in history. Horatio Spafford was a successful Chicago lawyer in the 1870s. He had invested heavily in real estate along the shore of Lake Michigan. And then the Great Chicago Fire of 1871 destroyed most of it. He was financially ruined, but he held on. 2 years later, he decided to send his wife and 4 daughters on a ship to Europe while he followed shortly after. The ship, the Ville de Havre, collided with another vessel in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. It sank in 12 minutes. His 4 daughters drowned. His wife was found floating unconscious on a piece of wreckage. She survived. Spafford got on the next ship to Europe to be with his wife. And as his ship passed over the approximate place in the ocean where his daughters had gone under, he sat down and he wrote these words. When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul, written over the water that took his daughters, written out of a depth of grief that most of us will never have to know. And somehow, instead of despair, what rose from him was a declaration of trust, a song, a holy song. That is what happens when the Spirit of God lives in a person. The very worst moments become the birthplace of the most enduring songs, because the song doesn't come from the circumstances. It comes from somewhere deeper. It comes from the unshakable anchor of the soul, the hope that is set before us. The hope of Jesus returning, of all things being made right, of every tear being wiped away. And you? What do you feel when you think about this? When you think about Jesus coming back, not as theology, not as doctrine, but as a real event, as a real person, as the one who said, I will come again and receive you to myself, what rises in you? Is it fear? Is it longing? Is it hope? Is it joy that feels almost too large for your chest? Write it in the comments. I'd love to read it. I really would. Because I think what you're feeling matters more than you know, and I think you are not alone in it. There is a verse in the Song of Solomon that has always undone me. It is short. It is almost unbearably tender. It says, the voice of my beloved, behold, he comes leaping over the mountains, bounding over the hills. The voice of my beloved, behold, he comes. Throughout Christian history, the Song of Solomon has been read not just as a love poem between two people, but as a picture of the relationship between Christ and his church. And in this verse, the bride hears the voice of her beloved before she can see him. She hears him coming, and she says, behold, look, pay attention. He is on his way. I think this is what the holy songs of our generation are. I think the worship music rising from the church right now is the bride saying, I hear his voice. He is coming. Behold. Every Hillsong anthem that makes you catch your breath. Every hymn that brings tears you didn't expect. Every spontaneous moment of worship where the room goes quiet and something heavy and holy fills the air. Every song that you've listened to in the middle of a hard night and felt like it was speaking directly to your soul. Those are not accidents. Those are the sound of a bride who hears her beloved coming. Let me share one more story before I bring us home. There is an account from the early church, from the writings of Eusebius, about a man named Polycarp. He was a bishop in the city of Smyrna. He had been a disciple of the Apostle John himself, the same John who wrote Revelation, the same John who saw the Lamb and heard the new song. Polycarp was very old, 86 years old, when he was arrested and brought before the proconsul. The proconsul told him to swear by the fortune of Caesar and he would be released. Just say the words. Just deny Christ. And Polycarp said, and these are his actual words, recorded within decades of his death, he said, 86 years I have served him, and he has done me no wrong. How then can I blaspheme my king who saved me? They burned him. And the account says that as the flames rose around him, those who were watching heard him praying, not screaming, praying, giving thanks, blessing the God who had brought him to that moment. A man who had sat at the feet of the man who heard the new song before the throne of the Lamb, dying with a song of thanksgiving on his lips. That is the thread. That is the unbroken thread from the earliest church to this moment right now. The people of God, the real ones, the ones who have been marked and sealed by the Holy Spirit, the ones who have made the decision to follow Jesus no matter what, they sing in the fire, in the pit, in the darkness, in the waiting. They sing because they know something the world doesn't know. They know that this is not the end of the story. They know that the beloved is coming. They know that the trumpet is going to sound. They know that every tear will be wiped away. They know that sorrow may last for the night, but joy comes in the morning, and the morning is coming. It is closer than it has ever been. I want to leave you with this. If you are a person of faith, if you love Jesus, if you have given him your life, if you carry the hope of his return in your heart, even on the days when it's hard to feel it, I want you to know that your worship matters, not just for your own soul. For the world, the holy songs rising from this generation are not just personal expressions of faith. They are a witness. They are a declaration. They are the sound of a people who have not been overcome, who have faced grief and doubt and suffering and the weight of a world that is clearly broken and chosen to sing anyway, to keep singing, to sing it louder. Paul and Silas were in prison in Philippi. Their backs had been torn open by flogging. Their feet were in stocks. It was midnight, the darkest, loneliest hour. And Acts 16 says that at midnight they were praying and singing hymns to God. And the other prisoners were listening. And then, suddenly, an earthquake shook the foundations of the prison. The doors flew open. The chains fell off. Your midnight songs shake foundations. Your worship in the dark opens doors. The songs you sing when you don't feel like singing are the most powerful ones of all, because they are the truest ones. They are the ones that come not from happiness, but from faith. Not from good circumstances, but from an anchor that holds. And here is what I believe with everything I have. Jesus is coming for his people. Not as a metaphor, not as a vague spiritual concept, as a real, physical, glorious, universe-shaking, history-ending, tear-wiping, death-defeating, king-arriving reality. He said, I go to prepare a place for you, and if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, there you may be also. He said it, he meant it, and he is faithful. And until that day, and every day until that day, we sing. We sing the holy songs. We sing the songs of the last days. We sing the song of Moses and the Lamb. We sing the new song before the throne. We sing It Is Well With My Soul. We sing A Mighty Fortress Is Our God. We sing with Perpetua walking into the arena. We sing with Polycarp in the fire. We sing with Paul and Silas at midnight. We sing with every generation of the church that has loved this Jesus and refused to be silenced. We sing because he is worthy. We sing because he is coming. We sing because we are not home yet, but we can hear his voice. Behold, he comes. If this video moved something in you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment with what God is speaking to your heart right now. And if you haven't yet, subscribe and turn on notifications, because we are going to keep going deeper into these conversations together. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being part of this. God bless you, and keep singing.